Time now to take a look at the waiver wire presented by Snickers. Rookie mistake. Maybe you just need a Snickers. Maybe my fantasy team needed a Snickers at the beginning of the season with all the injuries. I did listen to our FFT guys a couple weeks ago when they said pick up Chuba Hubbard. That was huge for me. Last week it was Tank Bigsby as one of the guys to make an impact here. Do you have any of these guys on your mini fantasy team?
I don't have any of these guys, but I'm very interested in Juju Smith-Schuster after the game that he played last night.
Yeah, he was huge. Our guys did tell us yesterday, I think, that he could be an impact player, which we are going to send things over to our FFT crew of Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. Guys, give us the tea for our fantasy matchups this week.
You got it, Haley. You got it, Katie. I mean, it was a great game for Juju Smith-Schuster, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come, you know, looking at what he did in the absence of Rashee Rice, who's going to miss the rest of the season. But let's start with the running backs, because that's a big story, obviously, when we talk about 4 teams on a bye. Remember, you're going to lose some prominent guys for this week. And hopefully some of these running backs can step in as replacements, not just for the bye replacements, though, Dave. We got injuries, and we have maybe some new starters on some teams, starting with Tank Bigsby, because you look at the situation in Jacksonville right now, and he may be the best running back for Jacksonville because Travis Etienne dealing with that shoulder injury. We don't know exactly how things are going to go there. But here are the running backs that we're looking to add for week number 6. And hopefully some of these players can be impacts, not just what they did in week 5, but also moving forward. Tank Bigsby, certainly at the top of the list. You got Tyrone Tracy Jr. as well. Ty Chandler is a 2-week situation, potentially, because we may not have him. We're not going to have him for week 6 because the Vikings are on a bye, but week 7, if Aaron Jones is out, Chandler could be the replacement. Roshan Johnson doing a nice job in tandem with DeAndre Swift. And then Jalen Warren might be somebody you want to add now with the hope that he does return, because Najee Harris is not getting the job done. But Dave, when it comes to Tank Bigsby, is he now your favorite Jaguars running back?
I can't say that he's my favorite Jaguars running back for the rest of the season, but the last 2 weeks are really, really encouraging. I just have it written down right here. In the NFL, Tank Bigsby, over the last 2 weeks, 2nd in yards per carry, 1st in yards after contact, 1st in avoided tackle rate, 4th in explosive rate. Jamey, he's 32nd among running backs in rate of 0 or negative runs. He's being very, very efficient for the Jaguars. He's certainly more physical. We don't know how healthy Travis Etienne is, and we don't know what role Etienne will have as soon as next week against Chicago, who, by the way, have struggled to stop the run. I think Bigsby can be used as a number 2 running back as soon as week number 6, and he just might very well be the best running back in Jacksonville. I just have a tough time saying that, knowing what Travis Etienne's upside is.
You see these numbers against the Colts. That was a good matchup the week before against the tougher defense, the Houston Texans, 7 carries for 90 yards. So
yeah, he had a huge run in that game.
He's just doing a good job. Just keep in mind a couple things. If he doesn't score touchdowns, you might have a little bit of a dead zone type of running back, a trap back, and only 1 catch on the season. It was last week against the Colts. That was after Etienne was dealing with the shoulder injury. Tyrone Tracy stepping in for Devin Singletary, dealing with the groin injury. And Tracy was awesome against the Seahawks in a surprise win for the Giants on the road. Remember, no Malik Neighbors in that game. So Tracy may have another opportunity here, Dave, against a great situation, great matchup against the Bengals defense that has been abysmal. So Eric Gray got the start, but he fumbled, which led to an early lead.
It led to this.
For Seattle. And then it led to, like you said, led to this, to Tracy getting 18 carries, 129 yards. I thought he'd be a little bit more involved in the passing game because he's a former receiver, but can Tracy be someone that you're interested in starting if Singletary's out against the Bengals?
Definitely, because it's the Bengals, and I think he proved to the Giants coaching staff that he can be the main guy, and certainly the efficiency was amazing in that game. And I also think we haven't seen what he can do as a pass catcher. That's something that they can add to his plate as we move along here. And I think he's got staying power to at least be in a 50-50 split with Devin Singletary.
Wow.
Once Devin Singletary is healthy, he was already playing around 20% of the snaps before Singletary got hurt. Now I think he's proven that the Giants can actually put together a decent 1-2 punch on the ground between him and Devin Singletary. So Tyrone Tracy, number 2 for me on the list of guys to pick up this week off the waiver wire.
Keep an eye on the situation with the Texans also. Joe Mixon not guaranteed to return in a great matchup against the Patriots. And Dario Ogunbowale had 21 total touches. He scored at least 14 PPR points in each of the last 2 weeks. Widely available in the majority of CBSSports.com leagues. Let's transition now to the wide receivers, and this is a fun list as well. You got Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Downs, Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm skipping over the second names because there's a lot of ifs and ands when it comes to Darius Slayton and Alec Pierce. Slayton dependent on Malik Neighbors, Pierce dependent on Joe Flacco starting, even though Pierce did have 2 good games with Anthony Richardson to start the season. That was before Downs was active. He was dealing with an ankle injury. Juju, you can make a case he's the number 1 player to add for this week, because if you don't need anybody, Smith-Schuster's on a bye in week 6. Could be the number 1 receiver for the Chiefs moving forward. Jalen Tolbert has been great in 3 of his last 4 games, specifically in week 5 with the Steelers matchup. DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett, Allen Lazard, these are veterans you can use as number 3 receivers. Romeo Doubs, Michael Wilson, these guys are getting bigger opportunities. Doubs coming back from the suspension. Wilson, leading receiver for the Cardinals last week in the win against the 49ers. Let's start with Wan'Dale Robinson, Dave, because I'm surprised he's not at the threshold we typically talk about, which is 65% rostered. He's been amazing so far this season. With Neighbors, without Neighbors, he's been a go-to guy for Daniel Jones. Jones is playing great himself. Is Wan'Dale someone that is just a plug-and-play, set and forget it, number 3 receiver in PPR with a chance to be a starter in every format moving forward?
I think he is, but I don't think he's got the most upside of the names of receivers that were on that list. I love the role that he's in, but you know exactly what he's going to do. If he doesn't get the volume, let's say this Giants running game that I just got done talking about, saying they could be really good. Well, if they're really, really good, then that's going to impact the targets for everybody in New York, and it's going to mean that Wan'Dale Robinson, instead of getting 8+ targets, maybe he gets 6 targets. Instead of 6 or 7 catches, he only gets 4 or 5. And I feel like he's never going to be a monster in terms of yardage. And we also know that he's injury prone. He's not the biggest receiver that's out there. He could miss playing time down the line. And he's not the #1 guy in New York. So there are some flaws that I see in him. But you told me just now, number 3 wide receiver in PPR leagues, that's exactly what he is.
Yeah, and injury prone, I mean, he had an ACL tear. For the most part, he's been healthy otherwise. I do think the one thing about his target share, you say he's not the #1 guy there. His targets are better than a lot of #1 receivers because of how much Daniel Jones is leaning on him. He's got 4 games with at least 8 targets so far this year. That's better than a lot of #1 guys. So Wan'Dale getting the job done. Juju Smith-Schuster got the job done in the first game without Rashee Rice against the Saints. Goes over 130 yards, his best game since Week 18 of the 2020 season. Now, he was with the Chiefs in 2022. I think some people forget about that because he was disappearing act with the Patriots in 2023. And in that season, he had 6 games with at least 13.9 PPR points. So he was getting the job done as a go-to guy for Patrick Mahomes. Is this sustainable, though, for 2 reasons? 1, it's Juju.
Yeah.
2, they now have 2 weeks to maybe address the receiver position via trade, and they can go make a move, especially if they see Devontae Adams go someplace else and the dominoes start to fall.
But did they see enough from Juju Smith-Schuster in Week 5 to say, oh, cool, we can keep our draft picks. We don't have to make a move because Smith-Schuster showed us that he still gets it, and he's still in the offense, and he's still catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. And if he's going to get 8+ targets per week, then I'm going to be a big, big fan of adding Juju Smith-Schuster. Here's the best part about it. This week, Jamie, you know this, the audience doesn't. There are a ton of wide receivers that you can go after on the waiver wire. So even if you make Smith-Schuster a priority, knowing that he can't play for you in Week 6 because he's on bye, you can still find another receiver to plug and play for week number 6, and then you're probably dropping that receiver, and then you're just going to roll with Juju potentially as a number 3, maybe even a number 2 wide receiver. I thought he looked great. I'd rather have him on my roster than Wan'Dale Robinson.
Okay, I'd take Wan'Dale, but it's close. Hopefully both guys are starters for the majority of fantasy owners rest of season. Let's go to the tight ends now. And again, this is a position that's starting to get a little bit better. You know, Kyle Pitts coming off a strong game. Travis Kelce looking alive again now that Rashee Rice is hurt. And you got some guys on this list that could be potential starters for you. Dalton Schultz gets the benefit of no Nico Collins for who knows how long. Tyler Conklin's been very good in the last 3 games, 17 targets in his last 2 games. Cade Otton, 9.7 PPR points in 2 of his last 3. He's playing much better of late as well. And then in deeper leagues, Theo Johnson's coming off a 5-catch game. I'm sure that coincides with Malik Neighbors not being there, but this is a young tight end that could be starting to get more involved in Brian Daboll's offense. Let's talk about Schultz, Dave, because we had 2 weeks ago, no Tank Dell. Schultz did not step up. He did get 6 targets, did not have a big game. But now you lose Nico Collins for what is being reported as week to week. Can Schultz be a plug-and-play tight end for Fantasy Manager?
I think he's a TD or bust tight end. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to say that he can get you 10 PPR points. He just hasn't been able to do it so far this season. And you think about those middle-of-the-field targets where he was dominating last year, well, that's Stephon Diggs territory now. And if they can still run the ball even without Joe Mixon, makes me nervous to put too much on Dalton Schultz. Is he a streaming tight end for Week 6? Absolutely. Would be happy to have him. And he might even be ranked in my top 12, top 15 at the position. But I'd rather go and get Taysom Hill first, knowing that Taysom Hill has some serious upside as a guy who is listed as a tight end but isn't exactly a tight end. I don't know how that works in New Orleans, but that's how it works for fantasy. Even if he's not available, I can go get Taysom Hill first and then double back for someone like Schultz off the waiver wire later.
All right, Taysom's dealing with a rib injury, did not play in the Monday night game against the Chiefs, so hopefully he's healthy to use him, and he may see some time under center, not as a true quarterback, but Derek Carr dealing with that oblique injury. Let's talk about the quarterbacks here, and Carr among one of the quarterbacks that could be out, along again with the 4 teams on a bye. And here are the quarterback options that could be replacements. It's nice to go to your waiver wire and find a guy who just threw for 500 yards, right? Kirk Cousins coming off that huge game last week against Tampa Bay. Daniel Jones in 3 of his last 4 games over 20 fantasy points. You ready for this? That's better than Patrick Mahomes.
Yes,
Joe Flacco was awesome, as expected, against the Jaguars. Much tougher matchup against the Titans, but could still be a starting option if he starts, with Anthony Richardson dealing with that oblique injury. It's time to stash Tua because he could be back in Week 8, and so get ahead of it now if you have the roster space to carry him, especially if you have an IR spot. Will Levis, yes, Will Levis. If he does play against the Colts, it's a great matchup, so you might consider starting him. And then you see some of the 2 QB options in Aiden O'Connell, Jameis Winston, Drake May, and whoever starts for the Saints right now could be Jake Haener. But let's talk about Kirk Cousins because that game last week, as you see, 42 of 58, 509 and 4 was fantastic. 42 fantasy points. Is this something that we can buy into, Dave? Not this level, but a consistent 20-point per game type of guy, because this offense right now is humming as Kirk Cousins is getting better.
I don't see it happening. I don't think he's going to throw 58 times, 38 times.
For you.
Yeah, he's not even in my top 12. I don't think they're going to need him to beat Carolina in week number 6.
They didn't need Caleb Williams, but he still did it well.
He did well, but you know what? Joe Flacco's the top QB for me off that list.
All right, give me Kirk Cousins for sure. Make sure you check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast, wherever podcasts are found. We're helping you dominate your fantasy league. Scan the QR code and check us out. By the way, we're award-winning, the Fantasy Football Today podcast.